What's going on, Bears fans? Nicholas Moriano here. Decided to do another video to really just cap off everything that has happened this week. A bunch, obviously, with the Bears head coaching search. It seems like every single day that passes, there's either a new candidate, and I think it's kind of capped off at around 15. I believe that's a number at this point, or at some point, the Bears have completed an interview. And actually, at the time of this recording, I think we're still at four, if I'm not mistaken. I've been doing this little thing on Twitter where I just find a GIF of just the number of candidates that they do when I quote tweet the Bears. Tweet that they've scheduled or have completed an interview with whoever it may be. And the coaches that I have so far at the time of this recording: Vrabel, Drew Petzing, Anthony Weaver, and Pete Carroll. So that's where it's at right now. I'm sure that number is going to grow, and it will obviously continue as this weekend goes on. So just have to wait and see where the Bears end up and who they end up actually interviewing just in this weekend alone. Before I kind of get to answering all the cool and great fan questions that were submitted earlier today, I wanted to talk about this All Pro voting that was just announced earlier on Friday. Just looking at the list, the Bears actually had three players who received some votes for All Pro. You had Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Carter, and Scott Daly, the long snapper. And this is a team with the Bears with only ending with 5 wins. You're not going to get a lot of players being recognized for the All Pro voting, but also I just think that this whole process is a little skewed and it doesn't recognize the players that actually are doing good things on the football field. It does help if your team is fighting for playoffs or, is successful. Bears did not fall into either of those categories, but if you go on Twitter, you see that Lane Johnson, the offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, voted to the second team All Pro behind Penei Sewell, who's in front of him, and he put on his locker a list of the stats that show that he was better in, I think, nearly every single category. So to me, if I don't know how it's even possible, to be completely honest, if you are one of the people who does get a vote, how you could monitor the entire league. As someone who has just covered one team, that in itself is a large task, and it takes every single ounce of free time to really understand what players are doing on the football field. And if you're just simply looking at, the surface level stats, how many interceptions did somebody get? How many sacks did they give up? How many sacks did they get? You're missing a lot. You really are. So it's an impossible task, in my opinion, to be a voter and then look at the entire league and say these are the best players at their respective positions when you're not watching every single snap. You're not going into the game film, the all 22, and seeing the matchups that these players have to face on every given week. So it's a tough task. So I feel for some of the voters, but also I just know a lot of players do get snubbed off these lists. And I was just looking at, the slot cornerbacks. And before I went through it, knowing that the Bears only had 5 wins, I still thought a guy like Kyler Gordon, who I thought had a really good season in 2024, would maybe receive one vote. That wasn't the case. I think it was Kenny Moore who received a vote. You also had Taron Johnson from Buffalo get a vote. Cincinnati's Mike Hilton get a vote. But there are a lot of these guys on this list where I look at the names and obviously recognizable, but are they that much better than Kyler Gordon? Look, I went into some of the stats just to kind of compare where Gordon stands amongst the guys that ranked in that slot cornerback range. And I did through Pro Football Focus and whatever you feel about their grading metrics. This is what I found. DBs with a minimum of 150 coverage snaps, because there are some guys that have played, minimal snaps that could grade out higher than other cornerbacks. And I don't think that's the right criteria to use. So I wanted to do at least 150. Gordon had the 10th best coverage grade, 76. There were 4 slot corners in that list that got all pro votes that were ahead of him. You had Garrett Wilson from Arizona. You had Marlon Humphrey from Baltimore, Cooper DeJean in Philly, and then Jordan Lewis in Dallas. And then just kind of looking at some of the stats, and this is not the end all be all, but if we're just looking at surface level stats, like I was just talking about, I'll tell you, you make the decision here. Garrett Williams, Arizona, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions given up. Okay. Marlon Humphrey, 3 touchdowns given up, 6 interceptions. I think that's why you can see a guy like him making that list. Also, he's played some good football. Cooper DeJean, no touchdowns given up, no interceptions. Okay. For the rookie, that's not bad at all. Jordan Lewis from Dallas, he's given up 3 touchdowns, also has 1 interception. How does that compare to a guy like Kyler Gordon? Well, in Gordon's season in 2024, gave up 1 touchdown and had 0 interceptions. I think when you're looking at things like this, outside of Cooper DeJean, all these guys, they did have interceptions. Jordan Lewis gave up 3 touchdowns, had the 1 interception. Kyler Gordon gave up the 1 touchdown, had 0 interceptions. Kyler Gordon also gave up the 3rd most yards out of that group. You had Humphrey with 518 given up, Lewis at 488, Gordon's at 472, right in the middle, and then DeJean 365 and Garrett Williams at 343. I actually spoke to somebody within the Bears organization who not only thinks that Kyler Gordon, and maybe a little biased here, but is the best nickel corner in the league, but also knows that the team didn't give him the platform for him to be recognized as he should as one of the better, more prominent nickel corners in the league. So I just think that if you get a Bears team that gets better with the win and loss record, having some meaningful games in December, January, guys like Kyler Gordon are going to be more so recognized. Even a guy like Jalen Johnson, who, got 4 votes, I believe, he would probably be even up there, even though he doesn't have some of the interception numbers that some of the other corners have had. But it really is about where you are at the end of December, January. So if you're in, these teams that are playing for meaningful games back at the back end of the year, your players are going to be recognized. They're going to be more of those primetime games. You have a better shot of impressing some of the voters here and how they kind of do things. So just wanted to address that before I get into all the fan questions. And again, really appreciate it. Fun variety and honestly a lot doing with the coaches, and I get it. So let's really get into this and talk about it. And there's some questions that overlap, so I'm going to just put them together here. But the first question, and again, 2 overlap here. We have at BDem7, and I like this. Actually, this is the first one to start things off. At BDem7, do you have any faith in the Bears will actually get this right? It made me think, okay, it's a new opportunity for the Bears to start fresh, to really take what they have in Caleb Williams and some of the pieces on defense and obviously some of the pieces on offense and make things right with a new coach. Do I have faith in the Bears? I'll start by saying this. I think just from my time covering the Bears, as a fan growing up, then being a credential media member, there really isn't a lot to base my faith off of that they'll get this right. And that's just me being brutally honest here. Because how this season shaped out, knowing that you kept Eberflus a season longer than you probably should have. You went with Shane Waldron when guys like even Thomas Brown interviewed for the same offensive coordinator job. And, a guy was very prominent in both of those things happening, Ryan Poles, is still there. It's not to say that he can't get better from those mistakes, but he still has to show it to me. And that's why this cycle is so important for the Bears to actually get things right. And I do have questions, and naturally I'm going to be skeptical of how this is all going to play out because it is the Bears, but I can't give them the benefit of the doubt because they haven't shown that they deserve it. And I will say this, just to address the number of candidates that the Bears are linked to, like I said, is around 15, maybe 16. If I missed one, I apologize. But that's not it's not a number that hasn't been associated with other teams when they've come to finding their next head coach. And I'll give you one example, most recent example. the Los Angeles Chargers in hiring Jim Harbaugh. And here's what um, chairman and owner Dean Spanos said last December after the team had fired Brandon Staley and GM Tom Telesco. They said the team would cast a wide net. Does that not sound familiar from what general manager Ryan Poles said last Tuesday? A wide net. And there's going to be some surprise names. Going back to the Chargers here, they interviewed coaches. The organization interviewed 15 candidates, various backgrounds from former NFL coaches, former college coaches, and current NFL coordinators. Bears can check all three of those boxes off in their current list of candidates that they have for their coaching search. And ultimately, even though they had 15 names, 15 candidates, the Chargers ended up with Jim Harbaugh and hired him on January 24th. And that's a team, you look at the results, or they hired him on January 24th, and you see the results, what the Chargers are now doing, 11-6, second in the AFC West, and will play Houston in the wild card round. You see the turnaround that a coach can have and the process that the Chargers went with to get their guy. Bears are doing a very similar thing with how many candidates they have, the wide range of background that these candidates come from, college, coordinators, former NFL coaches. So it's not that like you can't just say, "Oh, the Bears are doing this wrong," because look at their process. If you said the same thing about the Chargers and they got Jim Harbaugh, you would be, well, right now you would be wrong, because it looks like Jim Harbaugh is going to do some really good things for the Los Angeles Chargers and already on that route in his first year as the head coach. So maybe let's cool it down a little bit in their process. The one thing I did not like so far, as the Bears have finishing up the work week, I guess, of these interviews, when you have an opportunity to bring in a guy like Mike Vrabel or even Pete Carroll, who were, not on teams, so you're allowed to bring them in for these in-person interviews, I just think that's a miss on the Bears. Yes, you have these virtual interviews, and not to say that you can't get a good interview from anything virtually. I, recently had an interview, just a video call, and you can get a really good feel from a person, and it can be a really good experience. But when you have the opportunity, and if the Bears did have an opportunity to bring him in, if like scheduling was open for both Pete Carroll and Mike Vrabel, then you do it. You find a way to get him into your building. Because what does that say to them that you're only doing this virtually? That's what I would be thinking if I'm the candidate. Like, oh, why didn't we make this work in person? I'm free, I'm looking for a job here, looking to see if I'm right for you. But that's my biggest gripe. I'm obviously not too mad about the whole virtual process. Obviously, there's league rules and things like that. But if you did have an opportunity to bring those two guys specifically in person, because given their track records, how long they've been in the league, and what they've accomplished, you do it. The Bears didn't go that direction, so that's where they're at. But to answer your question, BDEM7, do you have any faith the Bears will actually get this right? I'm a half glass empty right now, but surprise me, man. Like I think I've done this too much, where I've, for whatever reason, given the Bears a benefit of the doubt, because it's a new year, new season, new coach. You hired, or you drafted whoever it may have been, and you just automatically want to feel optimistic about it. I get that, and I think naturally that's how I'm always going to be. But right now, actions speak louder than words, and I just need to see the Bears make the right choice, and we'll see if they can do that. All right, let's get to two questions that are pretty similar here. I had Joe, who reached out on Instagram. Joe, you're the man, and at Bearer for Chicago. I'll read Joe's question and then Bearer for Chicago's. Joe asked, and he gave me a two-parter, so I want to really address the first part here. Ben Johnson and Vrabel get hired elsewhere. Who is your third option that you still feel positive about? And then that second question from Bearer for Chicago: what is your top three coaching candidates if Johnson and Vrabel aren't available? Why them over others? perfect mesh here. Like how you both are thinking. So for me, and this will come with I think some controversy, but it's my list. I can say whoever I want. Uh, as I have looked at this coaching search and what's going to be best for the Chicago Bears, specifically for Caleb Williams, I do lean more into an offensive minded guy. I just do. I just think that when you're presenting a quarterback plan for Caleb Williams, that's going to be a more not only detailed but plan that has been established when it comes from a guy who does coach on the offensive side. It's not to say that defensive guys can't do it, but I just have more faith that an offensive guy can bring out the qualities that you need to see out of Caleb Williams in year 2. So my first candidate outside of Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel is Cliff Kingsbury. And why I say Kingsbury is for my first guy here, let's just go back to this season. What he has done with Jaden Daniels, that Washington Commanders offense, it was a plan of attack and offense that was catered to Jaden Daniels' strengths, right? Like when you look at how they operate, what they do best, you're going to see a lot of no huddle. You're going to see a lot of RPOs. You're going to see a lot of deep shots. Those are all things that Jaden Daniels was good at while he was at LSU. So instead of Cliff Kingsbury going with the approach of you're going to run my offense, he looked at Jaden Daniels and said, I'm going to adapt my offense to you. And that's why you see the success that the Washington Commanders have. And I'm just going to look over at my screen to my left to, just some of the notes I have here. I mean, Commanders 5th in points. They were 23rd in points in 2023, 7th in yards. They were 24th in last season. But aggressive throwing the ball downfield, 13 pass attempts of 40 plus air yards. That was second in the NFL. We actually saw one of those pass attempts. I think it was against Tyreek Stevenson to McLaurin down the left sideline that would fit under that category of 40 air yards. And ran the no huddle offense 197 more passes than any other team. Look, Cliff Kingsbury said, this is what Jaden Daniels can do. Let's run it here in year 1 at Washington. And eventually that system is going to have to adapt and develop because defenses will catch on at some point, see what they do best and take away things. And Jaden Daniels is going to have to get better at just being in the huddle, calling things out, audibling when he needs to. But when it came to having Jaden Daniels start off fast, he went with stuff that he knew. And I really do appreciate that about Cliff Kingsbury and how he sees things from the quarterback's eyes, a rookie quarterback, and is able to, adapt the offense to what it needs to be at that specific time. And this is also a guy too, when you think back to before his time there in Washington, he obviously overlapped with Caleb Williams at USC, so he has familiarity there. But I think the biggest questions that anybody would have a Cliff Kingsbury comes to his time in Arizona when he was the head coach. And by the time things were kind of ending there, that's where I think the biggest questions come from Cliff Kingsbury, because there was a good article from ESPN. The author John Kim wrote and detailed some of the things that were going on. I just want to share some of them, and definitely got to go check it out because he did a really good job of detailing just some of the things that happened in Arizona, especially at the end. And one of the things when Kingsbury was the head coach at Arizona, the article stated that he would go through stretches without interactions with Kyler Murray. Players said that Kingsbury often would avoid confrontation. So those are huge red flags. Because what you want in this next head coach with Caleb Williams is somebody that not only is he's not going to avoid communicating with his quarterback. He's going to be almost someone that over communicates with him, and someone that instead of running from confrontation is going to run towards it. And you just hope with time, being at USC, taking some time off after being in Arizona and then being in Washington, he's learned from those mistakes. And that article also states that Kingsbury said in his time with Dan Quinn has opened his eyes to what he could have done better. And one of the players that was actually in Arizona at the time with Kingsbury, that's also in Washington, Zach Ertz. And he said that now Cliff Kingsbury is direct when he has to be, but also joking at times. He has good balance. So I think for anybody who has maybe failed at one thing, whether it's a head coaching job or that first experience, it's all about how you can take the feedback from whatever experience that was and turn it into a positive so you can be better the next time. And I think that's what you really want to see if Cliff Kingsbury can do, given if he's given another opportunity to be a head coach. And in that same article, it also states that Kingsbury won't leave for money. Like, that's not what he's looking for a head coaching job. And he said on January 2nd, it would take a lot to leave this kid. And he's referring to Jaden Daniels. So I guess there are questions whether or not he even wants to completely move out of that role as offensive coordinator. But when I'm just thinking of who's going to get the most out of a Caleb Williams, if it's not Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel, Cliff Kingsbury was just someone that made so much sense to me. And it's not just that, like he's worked with a bunch of quarterbacks that have unique skill sets. Obviously, Kyler Murray. You have Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. You had Johnny Manziel when he won the Heisman at Texas A&M. Like, there's a track record there. And do I think that Cliff Kingsbury will be better in his second stint as a head coach than he was in his first? Absolutely. You had time on task doing different roles at different places, USC, Washington. And if this is what you ultimately want, to be another head coach and to do it with a quarterback that you're already familiar with, bring it. And now we just need to see if he can command a room that, he had his struggles with when he was in Arizona. But I would like to see if that's the route he goes and he does get that opportunity with Chicago. I'm curious to see how that would all play out. All right, that's my first option. The next one, we're pivoting, like I just said in the beginning, like I really am leaning towards offensive guys. I really am. But I also like Brian Flores, and he's going to be my other option here. And the biggest thing that Brian Flores needs to address to Ryan Poles and this Bears organization is, one, what happened in Miami? Why did things get so bad to where Tua Tagovailoa is going out there on record, describing his experiences and obviously not being in a positive light there? But also you need to maybe also discuss with some of the staff members that were in Miami at the time. Like, there are reports that I believe it was Ryan Fitzpatrick who recently was on a podcast saying that some of those staff members don't even communicate with Brian Flores. So you need to get to the bottom of that. But if Brian Flores can address some of those questions, and you truly do believe him, and he does have familiarity at Boston College with Ryan Poles, then if you get over that and he has a plan to develop a young quarterback, then I think there are a lot of things to like about Brian Flores and what he can do to be a culture setter for an organization. Just speaking with, people that cover the Minnesota Vikings, they're the defensive players that play under Flores have nothing but positive things to say about him. Not only that that Flores is going to uphold these guys to a high standard, but he's also going to encourage these guys to play to their maximum potential by putting them in different positions and just finding creative ways to utilize a player's strengths. And I think that's really enticing if you're thinking about what he can do, not only to this Bears defense, but for this Bears team, empowering players to, one, play to their max potential, but also to just speak up when they need to. I know that was something that Ryan Poles addressed to some of the team captains, at the end of locker room cleanouts, is that we just need more voices from those leaders in the locker room to speak out. And I think Brian Flores would be somebody that encourages that to happen. But if not, he can be somebody that can do it himself. And then the Bears, it seems like at this point, need more of that enforcer of discipline. I think those are the words that Kyler Gordon used exactly for what he's looking for in the next head coach. Brian Flores checks that box. And the biggest questions are, who's he going to bring as just a offensive staff from his time in Miami if things didn't go right there? Can he utilize his time in Minnesota to bring anybody, or just all of his previous stops? Obviously, New England being another one as well, to see who he can bring to develop a guy like Caleb Williams. So I do like the potential there, and I think the Bears would need to be blown away by the quarterback plan, because the culture that I think Brian Flores can bring can really put this team in a position to change some things, to have some more accountability. We saw too many of these, whether it's false starts, encroachment penalties, things that were happening potentially back all the way in training camp, just surfaced all the way throughout the season. I think with a guy like Brian Flores, same how I would think with a guy like Mike Vrabel, that wouldn't be a thing. So that's why I really like Brian Flores, what he can do and how he can, I think, also get this defense to get back on track. I think one of the, it's not a underlying story, but you look at this Bears defense, it regressed. And it regressed after Eberflus was fired, but it still wasn't even on a good track record for most of the season, especially when it came to the run defense. Like, you need to see that improve. And Brian Flores, what he does defensively outside of this last matchup that they had with Detroit for the NFC North, they've been confusing teams, confusing quarterbacks, and making life hell for those opposing offenses. So I do like, again, the potential he would bring to a Bears team. Again, not my first defensive guy. I would still go Vrabel over him, and I would still have Cliff Kingsbury over Brian Flores. But both those guys, Kingsbury and Flores, do have former head coaching experience, and I think in their second opportunity to be head coaches, they would be both better, having learned what didn't go right the first time. And if people are skeptical, like, why would they even bring Brian Flores knowing what happened with Tua? You don't think that teams that are interviewing Brian Flores right now, like, you don't think Brian Flores is gonna know that he messed up and come with a better plan so that doesn't happen? Like, it's crazy. Like, of course he is. He's gonna do whatever is possible to ensure that first stint with the Miami Dolphins doesn't resurface in the second opportunity he gets, because you only get so many chances to be an NFL head coach. So I think that would be the first thing on top of his mind, of what he can do to ensure that the offense, the quarterback position, becomes a spot that can be stable but also grow as he is there, for as long as he's there, head coach. The third coaching candidate, and I'm kind of getting long-winded with this first two questions, but hey, it's there's a lot to talk about here. I debated a little bit. I debated between two candidates, and it's Todd Monken and Joe Brady. I think both have enticing attributes that they can bring as NFL head coaches. And looking at both of their quarterbacks that they're working with, they're both are working with guys that are in the MVP race, and Josh Allen and also Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen with Joe Brady and Lamar Jackson with Todd Monken. But I did, when I was like narrowing it down, who am I choosing for this third guy? I went with Todd Monken, man. The more and more I've researched about him, there are a couple clips on Twitter right now where, if you love guys that swear, he's gonna fulfill your need for a coach that loves a curse. Like, that is what Todd Monken's gonna do. I don't know how George McCaskey would feel about that, but I digress here. You can't neglect what he has done with Lamar Jackson this season. Career high in passing yards, over 4,000. Career high in passing touchdowns, 41, and the 4 interceptions. That's the second lowest in his career outside of his rookie season. So you've seen the quarterback develop in his second season, Todd Monken with the Ravens. And even, like, it's not even that what he's done with Baltimore, but go back to Georgia, winning back-to-back national championships, Stetson Bennett being a guy that did some really good things for the Georgia Bulldogs. And when you win 2 national championships, like, I think that speaks to what Todd Monken can do as a coach. He did have a time too where he was the OC with the Cleveland Browns, and Baker Mayfield didn't have his best season that year. 22 touchdowns, 21 interceptions back in 2019. But I know he's been on record, Todd Monken, saying that, his stats, Baker's, don't reflect the kind of quarterback that he is. And you see what he's doing now under Liam Cohen, which is not a name that the Bears have been associated with. Kind of disappointing, because I like Liam Cohen. But you see the quarterback that Baker Mayfield is. But even before that, Buccaneers, he was with the Buccaneers from 2016 to 2018 as an OC and wide receivers coach, Southern Miss head coach from 2013, 2015. So a very diverse background, someone that I think, if given that opportunity to be a head coach, can do some good things. I would think would fit that culture setting, can obviously look at an offense and adapt to what he thinks his strengths are. I know that just doing some research on him, he's a huge believer of running the football and said back when he got the job as the OC with Baltimore, big believer in establishing an identity. I think for the Bears this 2024 season, they were at a point, even towards that London game. I remember asking Shane Waldron in London, like, what is the identity? And still didn't have a very great answer as to what it was, but big believer in that. So I think if you were to set foot in the Bears organization, that would be established from day one. He also said you can't control the game without being able to run the football. I'm a big believer in that as well. And it's not that you need to get in what he was saying, 13 personnel and be heavy run with the packages that he says. Just you got to be able to run the football. And if you do that, that can help establish your identity and just create some complications for the opposing defense. And big thing too, he just wants his quarterback to play fast. So maybe if that's simplifying things, he said he'll do it. But working with a variety of different quarterbacks, different skill sets, you get a guy like Caleb Williams. I'm sure Todd Monk can look at his skill set, see what maybe wasn't working well in Caleb's rookie season, but also maximize what was working well and get that good blend of why he could, just get the most out of Caleb Williams in year two. So those are my top three candidates outside of Ben Johnson, who is my number one guy. I've said that on record multiple times, whether it's on Twitter or I'm pretty sure here in this medium. Ben Johnson, I do like Mike Vrabel a lot. I just think Mike Vrabel is going to be a lock for New England at some point, and we'll see, if the Bears can seal the deal with Ben Johnson, who I believe is scheduled. Was he a Saturday? And I know I have this somewhere up here as I'm kind of looking through my list of all these guys and all the notes I have on every single one of them. It's, what the most disappointing thing is, like, you take all these notes and you have them all, and you're only going to need one, right? There's only going to be one head coach. It's always the worst thing. But according to Adam Schefter, he'll interview with the Bears on Saturday morning, and Saturday afternoon, that will be Aaron Glenn that will interview for that head coaching job. But that's going to wrap it up for those questions. I keep forgetting to do this at the top of the show, but please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Nicholas Moriano. If you're not following me on Twitter, what are you doing? At Nicholas Moriano as well. Subscribe, like, leave a comment. So outside of Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, top three head coaching candidates. Who do you got and why? That might be a lot to type in the comments, but just give me your top three that you're going to take after those two candidates. If they're not available, they go elsewhere. I know that'd be a huge disappointment if both those guys are gone and the Bears have to settle. Yeah, it would be settling if you don't get one of the two guys I just mentioned. So let me know who you want in the comments, but subscribe. It would help me out as I grow this channel here. All right, we have another question, about another head coach candidate from Suraj, and I apologize if I messed up the name. I appreciate the question, though. If Pete Carroll gets the Bears job, then which assistants would be tied to him that could be part of a succession plan after Carroll retires in 3 to 4 years? Great question, and there's a lot of, we're guessing a little bit, but you got to go back to who Pete Carroll's been associated with. I'll just tell you, talking with people that have worked with Pete Carroll, they love him, what he can do for a program. And like I said earlier, if he was a guy that was interviewed in person, I think his interview would have gone really, really well for the Bears. And just because of his personality and just what I'm hearing from him and how he kind of operates. But the one name that as I was looking through candidates that have been linked with Pete Carroll that could be in that job would Greg Olsen, not the broadcaster or former Bears tight end, but Greg Olsen, who has 21 years of NFL coaching experience, has been with the Lions, Rams, Buccaneers, Jaguars, and Raiders twice. Worked with guys like Drew Brees when he was a Heisman finalist, Derek Carr, Jared Goff when he went to the Pro Bowl in 2017. You also have other guys like Chad Henne, Blaine Gabbert, Blake Bortles, Baker Mayfield. So a variety of different quarterbacks. And he was actually somebody that also interviewed for the Bears OC job the last cycle. The Bears end up going with Shane Waldron. So there is a little bit of familiarity there. But that was somebody that I was looking into as could he be the next guy if he comes in as the OC with Pete Carroll, and if, like you said, in 3 to 4 years ends up deciding to retire, because Pete Carroll will be 74 by the time he is if he becomes a head coach next season. So you would need a succession plan, but Pete Carroll still, he's running around like he's a 60-year-old, and you wouldn't even know that he's 70, according to my conversation with Chad Morton, the Bears running backs coach, who was with Pete Carroll for 10 plus years, or 10 years in Seattle. So that's a name that came to mind if you're going to go with that. And, Pete Carroll's been obviously in the NFL for a very long time. Does he pull his strings from previous stops? Definitely could. And that was the name, though, that I was thinking about. Like, yeah, maybe Greg Olsen, and don't even know if that's like right now he's not doing anything in the league from what I researched. So you would have to see, like, is that still what he wants? And that was just a name that, as I was doing some research, that could make sense if Pete Carroll is the guy. And I've also seen, like, I've also seen just a lot of people interested in like Pete Carroll, and if they don't get Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel, they're intrigued about what Pete Carroll could potentially do for this Bears team. And I think you would get a culture that loves not only playing for him, but some of that stuff that we've seen with accountability that also gets addressed. And just from, again, my conversation with Chad Morton, like, it never got to that point where players weren't holding themselves accountable, or things were getting swept under the rug. Like, people knew that Pete Carroll could have fun and make the work environment a fun place, but also you needed to get the things done that you need to get done. And that could be is well needed for the Bears team as they're moving forward with finding that next guy. All right, we got some questions, and there's been a lot of head coaching talk, and that's been my primary focus for damn near 40 minutes here. So let's move it on to a little bit of free agency, because I got a little bit of that and kind of changed the topics a little bit here. But we had Bobby Owens and Alex Rubinick, apologize, both asking about free agent options. So Bobby, what free agent or agents would you like the Bears to sign in free agency? Alex, with cap space flexibility, how is a viable option of O-line, D-line? And to be completely honest, have not really gone too in-depth with this at this point in the process, just because so much of the focus is on the head coaches, who's going to be next, things like that. But yeah, that's going to be very real very soon with all the free agents that will come to be, and what the Bears may need to do with guys like Tevin Jenkins are gone, which I do expect, and guys like that. But look, this may be the obvious one, but it would make a lot of sense for the Bears and what they absolutely need. But Trey Smith the guard for the Kansas City Chiefs, is going to be the biggest free agent, one of the biggest free agents in this cycle here. Former 6th-round pick in 2021, so has some familiarity with Ryan Poles when he was over there. Allowed 0 sacks this season. Great run blocker from what I've just watched a little bit of. Can get out in space. Will turn 26 when he's in June, so he's still a young player, ascending player. And, like, the Chiefs right now they're paying a lot of people, and they also have to consider, are they going to sign Nick Bolton, the linebacker, to a long-term extension? Is it going to come to him or Trey Smith? So I think the Chiefs are going to have some conversations that need to be had about what they want. They also have Creed Humphrey, their center, who's the highest paid center in the league right now, or one of the top in the league. So, like, you're already putting a lot of resources into the line, and that's a good investment, I always believe. But if you're Ryan Poles, man, you need to upgrade this offensive line by any means. And if that means going out and trying to get the biggest free agent guard, you do it. And you try to make it a very compelling deal to where you can get a major upgrade at a young ascending player to ensure that Caleb Williams does not go through what he went through his rookie season. And Caleb's been on the record saying that, he's also contributed to the sack numbers, but you just need to make sure you can fortify that line, not with just guys, but dudes that can help make things better for whoever that offensive coordinator is. Just be a building block. That's what you need, because outside of Darnell Wright as your right tackle, and I think there's speculation with Braxton Jones. He had the surgery, but he's given you some quality snaps. But could you upgrade? Definitely. You in this draft, you potentially could if there's a starting caliber left tackle. There will be, if maybe potentially a 10, but like those are like the two guys that you think are going to be back. Darnell Wright for sure, but Braxton Jones a little bit more up in the air. But you left guard, center, right guard, toss up, man. So you need to go out and there and upgrade the offensive line. And I just look at Trey Smith as like that no-brainer. Will the Chiefs even let him go? Up in the air at this point. But if there is an opportunity to get a player like that, and especially with Ryan Poles knowing him too through the draft process, like that's going to help. That's going to help too with understanding what's the type of player that you drafted at that point, but now look at him years later and seeing that development, and probably what you saw as a later round draft pick, but seeing not only the snaps, but the game, the meaningful games he's also played in, like that, I think speaks volumes too. So that would be the guy that I'm looking at for the Bears in the really early stages of even looking at free agency. So I know in the questions there, you guys even want a defensive line. I haven't even gotten to that point, to be completely honest. So I appreciate the question about the offensive line. Gets me a little bit, thinking of what could be. And I didn't have this one in my round of just in my document over here, but I did want to quickly, like, there was a 3-part question in here, and here we go. I found my tweet going to record today. I'm sorry this happened a lot later than I thought, but just could not get things working for me at this point. I don't know, technological things, and also just other things that were happening. But one of the questions from Benjin006, and you had actually 3 questions in here. First question: what are the chances the Bears will land either Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel? If they fail to land either, who would be your next choice? I answered that with the 3 choices I gave, with Kingsbury, Flores, and also Monken. Number 2: do you believe the Bears will actually hire DC as head coach, or is it just smoke and mirrors? I don't think it's smoke and mirrors by any means, but the Bears, what Ryan Poles was saying, he's not gonna essentially overvalue like an offensive mind just because they're an offensive mind. They're going to be true to the process, whoever fits the bill for everything that they're looking for: leadership, accountability, all these things. So I do really think that a defensive guy, if they wow them in the interviews, is definitely in contention. So I wouldn't disregard any of the defensive candidates at this point. And then the last question: what's next for you, Nick? That's a good question. As of right now, obviously I'm doing these YouTube videos and trying to just stay, connected with Bears content, but like, having some meetings and looking to obviously land that next full-time job in, this Chicago market covering the Bears. And that's the goal. So, it's only, I think, a matter of time, hopefully, for that to happen. But that's what's next for me. But until then, like I said, you got to follow, share this with other people. I really appreciate it. And, doing more stuff like this where I get to answer, your questions, bounce some ideas off of you. And we'll do more of the live stuff too. It just wasn't the right time today to do it. But yeah, I do plan on doing that. And I'll say this too, with going back how this all started with the head coaching search. There are a lot of names out there, some a little bit more underwhelming than others. Like, I know nobody wants like a guy like Mike Kafka or even Aaron Glenn is not seen as someone that people like. It's the first round of interviews. So there's going to be a lot of guys there, but it's really the second round that you got to zero in on. And those are the guys that, after that first round is over with, it's that second round, like, no doubt, right? But that second round, that when the Bears are starting to announce some of those things, that's where you get serious and seeing who will be that next head coach. So don't get too, I don't know, discouraged by who the Bears are putting out a tweet of. Like, we just finished an interview with so and so, and I'm actually just scrolling through my Twitter because I feel like I said, at any moment people can say that the Bears can put out a statement saying that they've interviewed X, Y, and Z, but nothing as of now. I'm sure that will change as the week goes on, but that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. 45 minutes. I don't honestly understand how it goes on that long. I don't know. I just go, but it does help when I do get awesome questions from you guys, and I always love talking Bears football, so I'm gonna do that. Like I said, until land that full time job again. But appreciate everyone for tuning in, watching, liking, commenting, sharing this. Like, it means a lot. So keep doing that. It helps this channel grow, and I'm pretty sure I just hit the criteria for like super chats and stuff for the next live show. So let's get that going the next time I go live, and maybe the next time Bears have some news here, we'll definitely do that. But appreciate everybody. Hopefully you enjoy your weekend. Enjoy all of the playoff football. I know I'll be doing that with a couple buddies on Sunday, so it should be some fun matchups and some good games. And again, have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next time.